Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Justice League of America, issue number 118, dated May 1975. Confirm that. Yeah, it's a 1975 comic. This is a pretty good story. It was a good story for its era. Also very typical of its era. I'd say it's kind of above average for for what DC was doing at the time. It was still lagging behind Marvel, though. Okay, so we see our heroes here, and they really have taken a beating on this cover. This is one of the reasons why I remembered it so much as a kid, because the heroes in this issue really took a beating. Okay, we'll start from right to left because we'll start with Superman. Superman just looks exhausted. We see Aquaman here. He's in a wheelchair and he has a blanket over his legs, kind of like the style that FDR used to have. I think people did that back then because their legs would have tremors and it would be like sociably unacceptable for that. We see the Flash is decked out. He's bandaged up pretty badly, including a head one, while he still has his cowl on. And we see Black Canary. She's on a single crutch, so it looks like one leg is affected. And then we see Red Tornado, and his two arms have been yanked out. He's just standing there like a dope. He's a robot who kind of acts like he's human. So I mean, it's not like the others where it's like genuinely bodily health. He can just go to like the repair shop. I'm assuming that this is taking place on the Justice League satellite because here we see our heroes in this kind of futuristic, metallic backdrop as Earth is being invaded by a number of basically paper airplanes or, or kind of foam versions of airplanes. And the speaker is asking or is reporting the Earth is being invaded. Where is the mighty Justice League? And we see they're pretty much in a MASH unit. This is very odd in terms of the design of the vessel that the Justice League is in. It kind of looks like a larger version of the Titan submersible that cracked open in the Atlantic Ocean. So it kind of has that look. It also kind of looks a little like Neil Adams. There's very much a Neil Adams like feel to this cover. I'm probably going on way too long about the cover, but anyway, I'll tell you guys about the story. It's a good story. It's part one of a second parter, and this one is Takeover of the Earth Masters. So we open up. Before I actually go into the story proper, we see a Batman and Robin Twinkies ads. And I believe, in my memory, this is the very first one I've ever seen of these kind of Twinkie Hostess tie-ins. I actually did not like this as a kid. I thought the setup was stupid, the special mummy ray gun. And I felt it kind of cheapened the characters. I was 8 years old and I had these thoughts. It's obviously very well drawn. I just thought it was very juvenile. I disliked when my comics talked down to me, even when I was 8 years old. Okay, so I'm going to start with the story. Takeover of Earth's Masters. We see the lineup. It's in alphabetical order. We have Aquaman, Black Canary, Flash, Hawkman, Red Tornado, and Superman. There are other members, but they're just sort of in and out of this fight. And when you see how things go in this fight, you got to wonder what those other guys are thinking about. I mean, what could possibly be more dangerous than these guys, which are space polyps. So the space polyps are kind of are hitting Earth here, we see that there is a member of the Justice League who is aware that this event was going to happen. It's the Flash. He rushes in. He sees what's happening and just kind of, I guess, observing the situation. Now, before I turn the page, I'll talk about the creative team. It was written by Elliot Maggin. He was one of their mainstays in the kind of like mid to late 70s. I thought he was a pretty good writer. You couldn't really get a sense of how good a writer he could have been because DC had a very structured way of telling their stories. And it was great for getting comic books out at the newsstand on time, but it didn't make for really enjoyable reading for comic book readers. And people have said that, yeah, they stopped buying DC because the quality went down and the quality was much better at Marvel. So Elliot Maggin was one of the guys who tried to keep DC afloat at the time. We see the art is by Dick Dillon. He was a mainstay at DC. He was one of the guys that would establish their in-house style. So I think the artist that established DC's in-house style during the 70s was Irv Novak. And at Marvel, it was basically Sal Buscema. He was the guy who sort of set the tone for the in-house style. And Dick Dillon was one of these guys. He wasn't as good as Novak. He definitely wasn't as good as Neil Adams. He was a good journeyman. The characters looked on brand with him. So I would say that he's kind of like a lesser version of Irv Novak. And it's sort of like, it's good artwork, not great. So anyway, going into the story, the Flash rushing was actually just that was still going on as this conversation's going on between Aquaman and Hawkman. It turns out that Aquaman had relieved Hawkman of duty, but Hawkman had nowhere to go, so he just kept hanging around. He's kind of like the thing that wouldn't leave, or the kind of like the office rat who, once they get into the office, they find every excuse not to leave, even though it's well beyond their time to be there. So, and this is kind of bothering Aquaman a bit. I guess Hawkman's kind of getting on his nerves. Hawkman is saying, regale me with stories about Atlantis. And Hawkman's probably wishing that Aquaman 2 was out in theaters at the time so he could get rid of Hawkman. By the way, Aquaman 2, pretty good movie. So anyway, Aquaman, who ends up being kind of a dick in this issue, he's just trying to keep his sanity with this boring, I feel sorry for myself co-worker here. As Hawkman is kind of like, he's feeling sad that he can't see his wife. And the reason for this is that there's a virus on Hawkman's homeworld. He was off-world when this virus struck, but his wife was still there. And because the whole planet is quarantined, Hawkman's kind of stuck on Earth. And I guess maybe he needs to really mate with his wife or something, but he's really bringing in the blues. Aquaman's suggesting, hey dude, why don't you find some recreational activities, after work somewhere else away from me. And Hawkman's, he's kind of saying, listen, actually Hawkman is interrupted here because it turns out that the Flash is showing up on their monitor because they're both on duty. Aquaman doesn't really want to do his job, which is basically to push a button and to call an alert. He's saying, hey, we should trust Barry. Let Barry see what he can do here all by himself. Hawkman, however, he makes the executive decision to ring a general alarm to the rest of the members of the Justice League. So here we see some members of the league. They all get the signal at the same time. We see at the time Clark Kent is with Lois, the elongated man. He's kind of interrupting a kind of a small crime here, probably truck hijacking. We see Red Tornado just kind of answering a door. There must have been some production problems with this comic because it's really strangely edited. And it's by Jules Schwartz too, who's normally good, but this comic was weirdly edited. However, some of the members can't go to answer the alarm. We got Bruce Wayne. We got Batman as Bruce Wayne. He's at a swanky party. Turns out he's working undercover to kind of expose this crime boss, and at the same time, he's kind of cornered one of the Playboy bunnies there, kind of like pseudo Playboy bunnies. So he's kind of like mixing in, good civics and sexual harassment, but nevertheless, Batman decides that this party is where he needs to be, not where the Justice League want him to be. And we see Tom Palmer. He's kind of giving a TED talk here to a room full of scientists. You figure there's probably about 20 people there. They're probably the only 20 people who care about this likely very highly specific scientific study. But boy, I mean, Tom Palmer, he wants to impress those people. So he's like, fuck that, no interrupting the TED talk here. However, Superman does want to answer the alert, but he has to get rid of Lois. And his ruse is basically saying that he believed he heard that there was a mugger in some dark alley, and he pushes Lois forward, and he says, "You investigate it." So nevertheless, that's a kind of a crappy move. Nevertheless, he kind of pushes Lois forward. Lois doesn't see anything, of course, but Clark here takes off his clothing and he becomes Superman. So that's how he gets out of Lois's hair. We see Black Canary, nicely drawn. She's just reading, hanging around by the fireplace. So she's like, "Yeah, I can answer that." We see Red Tornado in the same drawing as he was on the other page. It's what made me think there's like production problems with this issue. But Red Tornado, he's ready to answer the call. It turns out that he's having some financial problems because his landlord is bothering him for some back rent. Honestly, really, the guy's a robot. What is he spending that money on? STB oil or something? I don't know. Anyway, the Flash is still dealing with the polyps, and he's a little surprised to see the other members of the Justice League showing up there because he did not send out a general alert. And the other members are kind of confused about what the Flash is saying, but then it turns out that Aquaman is teleporting into the area, and he's explaining that it was Hawkman who rung the alert, and not the Flash or himself. They mentioned that Hawkman's kind of bothered by not having Hawkgirl around, probably not getting Hawk sex. So they're kind of talking about his marital problems there, but it turns out that the polyps, who were not necessarily causing a problem for the Flash, are suddenly organizing into basically a single entity. And as they're kind of gossiping about their teammates, the Flash gets struck by one of them. The pain here is shown to be immense. So these guys can hurt at the very least the Flash. The other members kind of go into action. Here's an example of Aquaman being a dick. Red Tornado says, "The creatures haven't activated the Flash." And Aquaman says, Your talent for stating the obvious is uncanny, Red Tornado. And I mean, come on, you really have to be sarcastic with the guy, particularly since he's a robot. And particularly since, dude, like, traditionally you have been on the bottom of the Justice League Super Friends poll, no matter how many new members come or go or whatever. Oh man, what the hell is Aquaman doing? So anyway, the real heroes, the ones with powers, Red Tornado and Superman, they're going to attack this giant mass. Black Canary on her motorcycle grabs the unconscious Flash, and she requests to be teleported to the Justice League satellite. They maintain a headquarters on a satellite rather than having kind of like a station on Earth. So anyway, Hawkman is still on duty, and then we see Black Canary and the Flash teleport. Black Canary says that the Flash is hurt, and he needs the healing device. So anyway, she's requesting the healing device be pulled out. We see the other heroes. They're battling the polyps. Superman's trying to break them up, and Aquaman is using his quote powers to bring in snakes, frogs, and salamanders into the fight. God damn it, this is why they laugh at Aquaman. I mean, seriously. So anyway, we see the Red Tornado. He's being somewhat effective in breaking up the polyps, but they're still, they're disoriented because of the vortex effect, but he's not really doing much. Superman is starting to get weakened the more he's surrounded by these polyps. It turns out that they can actually create a form of artificial kryptonite. So Superman is noticing that they are evolving, and they're evolving in a way that's kind of frightening to them. Aquaman, he calls for the snakes, frogs, and salamanders to protect Superman, to help Superman. I don't know what Superman was thinking at the time. He was like, can you get Batman here? Someone who could help. But nevertheless, Aquaman does have control of these very simple, innocent creatures. They look like they're actually dealing with the polyps more effectively than the actual Justice League of America team. More than likely, they're just probably getting in the way. However, it turns out that Aquaman is losing control of these creatures, and they're basically just, the frogs and the snakes and salamanders are just kind of doing circus tricks at this point. So we go back to the satellite. It turns out that the healing ray, you only need one injection of the ray. Hawkman gave the Flash 2 injections. It doesn't look like the Flash is taking it well. And Hawkman is kind of like, sorry. So the healing ray may have fixed some problems for the Flash, but Hawkman gave him a few more now. So anyway, we go back to the combat theater, and it turns out the polyps, the individual polyps, not only can they combine together, but the individual parts are actually evolving. So it's like all the cells are evolving all at once. And it turns out that Superman, Red Tornado, and Aquaman, they're at this point, they don't know what to do. Aquaman is being attacked telepathically. I guess it's kind of like a play on his powers, his telepathic powers to basically enslave fish. And I guess that's how these creatures are finding that a weak point for him. So he's about to black out because of the pain. Red Tornado has no control over his powers. Turns out that somehow they can lower the pressure zone around him. And as the pressure drops, his ability to control his kind of tornado effect is lessened. So he can't use his powers. Superman is still weakened by the artificial kryptonite. So he's kind of, at this point, he's kind of beaten dead. These creatures, they're not stopping. They're not stopping at all. We see our three heroes, and Superman looks like he has a really bad toothache, but the other two members are near unconsciousness. And then we kind of have an odd break. I'm not going to look at the ads here, where the unconscious heroes are now back on the Justice League satellite. So the step from where they were to where they are now, they decided to cut that out. And I think they kind of did it in a clumsy way. I understand what they're going to do, because they're going to fill us in through flashback, but I don't think that this was a good segue. See, it seems more tell than show. So anyway, they're telling the story from when those three guys get back to the satellite. The Flash, he's finally awoken, and he's telling them what he knew about the polyps, because apparently he had gotten some advanced warning that some type of creature is coming to invade the planet. And he had no way of judging how dangerous a threat this was. So he didn't send out a general alert. He just decided to investigate it himself. It turns out that the invaders are communicating with this individual. It seems to be one individual at kind of like a university. Anyway, it turns out that the villain, or at least the one that's communicating with Earth about their intentions to invade, he's kind of this bat-like monster. And again, this is very much a DC monster villain. And yeah, it seemed like, well, we got to make him look like something. The character doesn't quite fit the plot, but yeah, this is what we're given. So anyway, they're talking. The villain is talking about the polyps, how the polyps work, how they're going to evolve, and then eventually they'll overtake the planet just by destroying the rest of the human race. And they're kind of just giving away the plan at this point. I guess it's one of those tropes. Okay, before I go back to the story, I'm going to take a look at these Treasury editions by DC. DC was actually the first, before Marvel, to put out Treasury editions. The Marvel ones were definitely more popular, but DC was actually first to the newsstand with it. The reason for that is that the comic book distributors wanted the comic book companies to sell higher priced items, because as much as comic books sold, the price points weren't particularly high. So they wanted them to try to get $1 products on the newsstand, something closer to what the weekly magazines were getting. But obviously, given that the audience was usually somewhat restrained in how much money they had, they couldn't price it too high. Okay, I probably went on too long. We see another in-house ad. One of the Treasury editions is the Bible. So I guess maybe they were trying to reach another audience, or maybe someone had a real desire to sort of tell some stories from the Bible. The art looks like it's from Joe Kubrick. It looks like the Old Testament. It says that it's a mix of both Old and New Testament, but it really seems dominated by the Old Testament. And it's probably kind of understandable. I think most of the individuals involved with this project were Jewish. So anyway, turn to the next page. And these are some new titles that were coming out from DC at the time. The editor or publisher in chief, Carmine Infantino, he realized that DC was getting crowded out by Marvel. That Marvel was much more popular, and they were really kind of threatening to take over newsstand space that DC had. And Carmine Infantino wanted to protect DC's newsstand space, so he almost created a bunch of titles just simply to take up space on the newsstand. And sadly, most of them did that. I don't think any of these were big sellers. Although the Joker went from bargain bin to wall comic in comic shops everywhere after the Tim Burton film. That was, I always call that a graduate from the bargain bin. I remember buying this issue. I thought it was okay. I ended up buying a few of these Joker issues. Justice Inc. This is kind of a licensed property. They were kind of big at the time. Licensed properties, not Justice Inc. Justice Inc. had some interesting stories, particularly when Kirby took over. We have Claw. Claw was basically a Conan ripoff. The only thing is that the hero had a deformed hand, which he hid in an iron glove. It wasn't a terrible comic, but it wasn't very original. It definitely looks exactly like Conan. Another is Ghost Castle. That's a trilogy of horror comics. Generally, DC did better horror comics than Marvel. See another title, Beowulf, Dragon Slayer. That had a great cover. First cover was great. Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter. I have to read those. This is an attempt to cash in on the Kung Fu craze at the time. Was Kung Fu fighting? Okay, so going back to the story, turns out the Polyps, the villain had given away the entire plan. And the Polyps are organizing in 3 particular areas around the globe. You have 6 members of the Justice League, so 2 members per place. It turns out that Black Canary and the Flash, they're headed to Hong Kong. Red Tornado and Aquaman, they're headed to Venice. And the last team is Superman and Hawkman, and they're going to be heading to San Francisco. However, as the other members leave, Superman kind of stops Hawkman, kind of saying, listen, bro, these guys are nothing to fuck with. And I need your head in the game. And frankly, your head has not been in the game. It's kind of, you've been a little iffy there. However, Hawkman assures Superman that, hey, I'm gonna do my job. I'm taking this seriously. I'm Justice Leaguer. Okay, so we go to Hong Kong first. Hong Kong, this is before it integrated with China at the time. So Hong Kong was kind of like a separate entity from the rest of China. It turns out that the Flash and the Black Canary, they have to start their offense in the water because they're along some type of rough water, maybe the Pacific Ocean, I don't know. So anyway, that's kind of like a questionable thing to do, but nevertheless, they felt forced to do it. However, they immediately regret that decision. Flash is smashed into a force field, and he's basically knocked unconscious. The Black Canary, who was his passenger, she's able to sort of leap out of his range, and she dives into the water. However, it turns out she ended up breaking one of her legs during this dive, I should say. So Black Canary, she's at this point she's hurt really bad. However, the polyps are kind of in the water, and they're closing in on the unconscious Flash. So Black Canary knows she has to do something. She swims towards the Flash. She uses her sonic scream in a very tight, focused way to sort of break up this column of space polyps. She feels that it might be effective because they never faced this power before and they may not have a defense for it. She turns out to be right. She reaches the Flash. She grabs the Flash. The Flash is he's still unconscious, but at least he can breathe air at this point. Black Canary realizes that they're in a bad situation and they need to get out of it. And they do so by sending out a signal to the Justice League satellite to basically be beamed out of there. One thing I do like this drawing of the Flash. He looks like he's getting a hand job. I don't think Black Canary's doing that. Also, I could see both of her hands. So, okay, so then we go to Superman. It's Superman and Aquaman. We said we're going to San Francisco. And this is one of the, I noticed that a lot of DC writers wanted to set things in San Francisco in kind of like the late 70s. I think because some of the writers, they weren't really big fans of DC's like analogs for real life places. You know, like Gotham is an analog to New York. Metropolis is an analog to Chicago. I think Central City is an analog to LA. A lot of those writers, they preferred using, the proper real life, setting, like in New York, Spider-Man. And I think that's why they included San Francisco a lot. And we see here, it looks like Superman's flying near the Coulter Tower. Coulter Tower's famous landmark in San Francisco. It's a nice place to go to if you're ever in the Bay Area. And I recommend going to the Bay Area. You get magic mushrooms legally. And the city's still great. San Francisco, not Oakland. That's where the mushrooms are. Same way, the Coulter Tower, which was built by a really rich woman who liked firemen. So basically, the tower looks like a fireman's penis. Half of it flies off. Superman sees this. He's trying to stop it. However, he's immediately intercepted by these space polyps. Superman, he notices that he's being attacked. He cries out in pain. These guys can hurt him. And Superman, he has to break off his attempted, rescue of the top of the tower there, as he's falling into the bay. He's covered with these polyps. He's trying to. He flies. He maneuvers a little. He breaks free temporarily, but they immediately are dive bombing him, and they're sticking onto his body. And that's causing excruciating pain for Superman here. Superman also notices how these creatures can take over the planet by basically hunting humans like cockroaches. So Superman's Superman's a reflective guy, even when he's in agony. Superman realizes that it's too much for him and that he has to escape this situation. So he signals the satellite to beam him up. So while this is going on, Aquaman and Red Tornado, they're in Venice. And so far everything seems reasonable to them. The Red Tornado, he sees a boat operator and he decides maybe he can get some help if he's seen something strange going on. However, it turns out the boat operator is something strange. The boat operator starts glowing and it starts kind of like poofing away in smoke, and then there's the space polyp is left. So the space polyps can take the shape of human beings in basically any role they want. Aquaman, he's underneath. He's surrounded by polyps. So both Red Tornado and Aquaman were basically played at this point. As the polyps are getting closer to Aquaman, he decides, "Hey, I gotta go." And however, he's surrounded by them, and he uses his famous whirlpool effect, where he just goes round and round and round, circling the drain. And this has helped him quite a bit. However, it does not help him in this situation. And we can see Red Tornado is doing what he can to get these pops. This art here is very kind of cartoony. And I mean, it was okay art. It's cartoony, but this part's really cartoony. And Red Tornado's doing what he can to at least kind of disorient the space polyps. Aquaman yells to Red Tornado to stop. Red Tornado stops, and then he sees that Aquaman was transformed into a merman. So half of Aquaman's body has basically been replaced by Charlie the Tuna here. It's the lower half. So I mean, he still has his face and his upper torso, but that lower part is gone. That lower part is scales and gills. Ugh. And God knows how bad he smells. So they both realize, hey, we need to get the hell out of here. This is really embarrassing for Aquaman here. I mean, really, they have to do that to the character. Just no respect for it. So anyway, we see Superman just sort of stumbling out of the Justice League transporter. What it seems to me, as also the Flash and Black Canary are going through the transporter, is that there's a queue. So if you're on the Justice League transporter, there might be some people ahead of you, and you definitely don't want any type of systems malfunction while you're in that queue. So anyway, we could see Superman's weakened. Black Canary has a broken leg. The Flash is just taking a general beat down all over his body. Red Tornado comes back with Aquaman as half fish. So at this point, they're like, "Holy shit! Did this guy get the worst of it?" And even Red Tornado mentions, "Yeah, he got the worst of it." Although Red Tornado, he has a smile on his face, so he might have remembered that smart-ass remark from Aquaman earlier. Superman, he's really concerned about his feelings. One of his teammates is basically half a tuna, and it's Superman's feelings that he's thinking about. Superman does notice that the polyps are somehow sapping energy from them. So one of the reasons why they're getting really beaten up here is that the polyps are sort of like draining their energy. But Superman's not 100% sure about that. They're too concerned about Hawkman at this point, because they're wondering where Hawkman is. And Aquaman's expressing that the other members may have been killed. So yeah, they're taking this threat seriously. However, the mystery of Hawkman absence is solved by Red Tornado. He finds a note that's kind of like, put there with a magnet, kind of like on a refrigerator, saying he was saying, "Hey guys, I kind of decided I had to go home to my home planet. with that dangerous virus that's keeping me quarantined out. I said, yeah, I really gotta go. He probably saw how badly their asses were getting kicked. And he was like, no, I don't want anything to do with this fight. The other members are really angry about this. I mean, on one hand, it's like, really, are you expecting Hawkman to be the savior? But at the same time, yeah, they took a beating, and he's just kind of like, he's just leaving them hanging out to dry. And it turns out that Hawkman is on his way to his home planet, and we kind of see that he's determined to get there. However, the other members just think he's being selfish. I remember buying the following issue. I think the virus somehow affects the polyps. The virus from Hawkman's world, I think he brings it back, and it affects the polyps. I don't know if I'll read the follow-up, even though I did enjoy reading this. It's very, the story's kind of pedestrian. The art's a little bit pedestrian. It's fine, workmanlike, but there's nothing particularly memorable, other than, like I said, how badly they got their asses kicked. Same way, I'm going to look at the letters page. And the letters page is mostly about issue number 115. That was one of those 100-page, 60 cents comics. I love buying those. Even though I hated the fact that most of it was a reprint, I love buying those giant issues. Or actually, I love making my mom buy them. However, this one, issue number 115, you got pretty bad reviews from the readership. There's one reader who's really kind of ripping it apart, pointing out really kind of bad inconsistencies. And the Justice League editors, they admitted that they got a lot of bad mail on this issue. And they admitted that, yeah, it was a bad issue, and we're sorry. One person wrote that he was not overall happy with it. However, he's a little kinder, saying that it was more like a failed attempt to try and do something good, rather than say just, you guys produced a bad issue. And, yeah, that's about it. So, like I said, I liked this issue as an 8-year-old. It really was like, oh my God, oh snap. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.